Despite the fact that we're right now in the spring home buying season, existing home sales in April both decreased from the previous month and from 1 year ago. This decline is quite remarkable given the fact that housing inventory this April is at the highest level since October of 2022. In other words, an 18-month high. Meanwhile, home prices increased by 6% from a year ago, but those gains may be losing momentum due to the rise in rates and inventory levels. This is based on a brand new report, and in today's video, I'm going to share all the details. And by the way, before we get started, if you guys want a real estate agent referral, check out my website, which is realestateteamfinder.com. Also, this video took me probably 6 hours to make because I'm going to share my own analysis of NAR's data. So if you guys get any value out of today's video, then please hit the like button. I greatly appreciate that. Of course, I appreciate you. Let's begin today's video because, of course, I have a lot to share here. So here's the article from the National Association of Realtors just posted today, which is May 22nd. It says existing home sales receded in April. This is based on a report that looks at existing houses, in other words, excluding brand new home construction or brand new houses. All four major regions in the US posted month-over-month decreases. In contrast, compared to 1 year ago, sales decreased in the Northeast, the Midwest, and the South, but rose in the West. Also, according to NAR's chief economist, Lawrence Yum, he had this to say: home sales changed little overall, but the upper end of the market, especially houses over $1 million, is experiencing a sizable gain due to more supply coming into the marketplace or the market. I'll have some news to share regarding that because for the past several months, we've been seeing a huge increase in sales for over $1 million and decreases in sales for less than $250,000 or less than $400,000. So because of this mix in sales, this is impacting the overall median sale price. It's not the only reason why prices are increasing, but it is impacting the overall trends I'm going to share in today's video. So here's a chart I pulled from NAR's website regarding existing home sales. And these figures, by the way, are seasonally adjusted and also annualized as well. So for April, there was 4,140,000 sales. That's down 1.9% from the previous month and down 1.9% from April 2023. And we did see decreases on a month-to-month basis for all four major regions. That's the Northeast, the Midwest, the South, and the West. In contrast, the only region that posted a gain year over year was the West, increasing by 1.3%. Also looking at non-seasonally adjusted numbers, these are actual number of home sales each and every month. We tend to have around 300,000 home sales each and every month on average. So far this year, we are at 1.19 million sales. That's January through April this year. And I did some digging for you guys because I looked at sales figures, the actual number of home sales January through April of 2023. And last year, this time, we were at 1.196 million. So just under 1.2 million sales at this time last year. This year, we're at 1.19 million. So the current sales pace this year is actually less than last year, which is mind-boggling given the fact that overall for the year as in 2023, we were at a 28-year low in home sales if you look for the entire year. So the current pace right now for home sales, January through April, is actually slower than 2023. So big picture, we're more or less on track to see a very low level of home sales this year. All right, let's get a little bit nerdy here because here's my analysis of NAR's data regarding home sales. The two columns I pulled from their website is a date and the seasonally adjusted annualized rate of home sales. Everything else is based on my own analysis. Anyways, for April, closed home sales this month were mostly for purchase contracts signed. In other words, offers being accepted between buyers and sellers in February when rates or average 30-year fixed rates were at 6.78%, and March when rates increased to 6.82%. I mention that because ever since then, average 30-year fixed rates have been hovering around 7% So that will likely limit the number of closed home sales in the near term. And keep in mind, we're at very low levels already. So I'll definitely keep you posted with the latest developments on that. Here's something worth noting as well, is that at 4.14 million, the current sales pace, at least for April, that was actually less than what was forecasted. The forecast was at 4.21 million sales. This is also the slowest pace of home sales since January this year. So for example, back in January, we're at 4 million sales. Now we're just over 4.1 million. On top of that, like I mentioned, we're at extremely low levels in sales this year. We're only about 290,000 higher compared to the 13-year low that was set back in October last year. October, we had just under 3.9 million home sales. Again, that was a 13-year low. And now we're only about $290,000 or 290,000 more than the trough of October last year. In regards to the month-to-month decrease, down by 1.9%, this marks the second consecutive month-to-month decrease. Quite the difference compared to the gains we saw in January and February. So for example, back in January, we saw a gain of 3.1. February, sales absolutely skyrocketed, up by 9.5% compared to January. Now it's down by 1.9%, the second consecutive monthly decrease. In my personal opinion, sales are likely decreasing due to 7% mortgage rates, and of course, due to a low level of housing affordability. Also, inventory rose from the previous month and from 12 months ago. But despite the gains of the number of houses for sale, sales still decreased from last month and from 1 year ago. And more on that here in a little bit. In regards to the decrease of 1.9% year over year, this marks the third consecutive month in which sales have decreased compared to 1 year ago, but not nearly as bad compared to 1 year ago. Back in April of 2023, sales tanked by 24.2%. Now they have decreased by 1.9% from 2023. Having said that, this marks the 33rd consecutive month in which sales were flat or down year over year. In other words, we're approaching 3 years of decreases. In fact, the last time sales increased year over year was way back in July of 2021. And by the way, the National Association of Realtors looks at sales of single-family houses, townhomes, condos, and co-ops. And that's the housing types that are tracked in their monthly data here. I also added this as well. Sales have decreased by 22% from April 2019. So compared to pre-COVID levels, we're down by 22%. Also compared to the 13-year high or 15-year high we saw in 2021 for the year as a whole, we're down by 31% from April of 2021. Going back to this chart from the National Association of Realtors, let's look at inventory levels and also compare my own analysis of their data here. So for the month of April, there was 1.21 million houses for sale. In my opinion, this figure here includes pending home sales and houses actually for sale, because this number at 1.2 million is far higher compared to Realtor.com and AltosResearch.com. Anyways, inventory increased by 9% compared to the previous month and also increased by 16.3% year over year. Also, the month supply right now is at 3.5 months, the highest levels going back to November of 2023, up by 9.4% compared to March and up by a whopping 17% year over year. But wait, there's more, because I want to provide some additional analysis besides just looking at year over year and month to month changes. So at 1,210,000 houses for sale, and also including some pending home sales, this is the highest amount since October of 2022. Now keep in mind, these figures regarding the month supply and inventory is not seasonally adjusted. And inventory tends to peak in the late spring and early summer months each and every year. So when looking at previous April levels, 1.21 million houses for sale is the highest April total looking at April of 2020. In other words, this is a 4-year high for the month of April at 1.21 million. So big picture here, looking at all months, this is the highest levels going back to October of 2022. However, going back to the month of April, looking at previous levels, the highest levels since April of 2020. And like I mentioned, the month supply is at 3.5 months, the highest supply levels since November of 2023. It's also nearly double that from April of 2022. So for example, April of 2022, the month supply was only 2.3 months. But again, looking at inventory levels at 1.2 million, that's the highest number since October of 2022. One more thing I do want to mention regarding the month supply is at 3.5 months. This is still lower than the around a 4-month supply that we saw back in April 2017, 18, and 2019. So in other words, inventory is rising, but we're still well below pre-COVID levels. Now here's something I added in on today's video, which is different compared to my previous videos I made for you guys regarding this. And this is something I've been talking about when discussing Realtor.com's data. So I actually want to look at not only the month-to-month change, the year-over-year change, but also the year-to-date change. This is a change in inventory levels from January through April this year, a giant increase of 20%. So far this year, inventory has increased by 20%. When looking at previous years, this is on par with what we saw back in 2022, but faster than the same time frame in 2017 through 2019. So a 20% gain so far this year. Last year, only an increase of 6%. 2022, a gain of 21%. Looking at pre-COVID levels though, which is right here, 2019, January through April 2019, it increased by 15%, 2018, 18%, and 2017 up by 14%. So the growth rate is higher compared to the previous year and previous month, but also the growth rate is rising faster when looking at pre-pandemic levels. So in other words, big picture, inventory is growing and increasing at a faster pace compared to years past. This should limit home price growth unless, keywords there, unless, mortgage rates fall greatly or inventory starts decreasing. Now, speaking of home prices, let's change gears and talk about the US median home sold price, because that is at $407,600 this April. That's up by 5.7% from April of 2023. Now, every housing market's different, right? Home prices increased the most in the West, up by 9.3% year over year. After that was the Northeast, increasing by 8.5%. The Midwest saw a gain of 6%, whereas the South increased by 3.7%. In regards to home prices, I have a lot more to share regarding that. Here's my own analysis of NAR's data. Again, these two columns is where I pulled from the website. Everything else is my own analysis. Anyways, for April, again, we're at just under $408,000. That's up by 3.7% from the previous month and up by 5.7% from 12 months ago. April's median sale price of $407,600 is the highest April levels on record. It still is below levels compared to the record highs that was set back in 2022 though. When looking at any months, this is the highest home prices we've seen going back to June of 2023. At that time, we're at $410,100. And I mention that because these figures are not seasonally adjusted. Like I mentioned, all-time record highs were set back in June of 2022. The trough was back in January of 2023. That was more or less the low point in our housing market looking at pre-COVID levels. So prices corrected or decreased by 13% from June 2022 compared to January of 2023. Ever since then, though, prices have increased by 13%. So therefore, looking at April's prices compared to June of 2022, we're only down by 1%. So we're only down by 1% compared to the all-time record highs set 2 years ago. So we're only about $6,200 less than the all-time record highs of 2022. Okay, let's look at the month-to-month changes and the year-over-year change, how that compares to years past. So this gain of 3.7% compared to March is actually the third consecutive monthly gain, which is seasonal, right? Home prices tend to increase during the spring home buying season. This is also higher than the 2.8% gain we saw from March to April in 2023. Now we're up by 3.7%. That increase, by the way, is slightly higher than the long-run average going back to 2010. Based on my nerdy Excel formula there, the average March to April change going back to 2010 is an increase of 3.3%, whereas this year we're up by 3.7%. Also, when looking at the year-over-year change, up by 5.7%, this marks the 10th consecutive month of year-over-year increases. Also, at this time in 2023, home prices were down year over year. That was only the second time since 2012 in which home prices decreased compared to 1 year ago. The first time was back in March, the previous month of 2023. So quite a turnaround, to say the least. Last year down by 2.5, now we're up by 5.7%. However, this is actually lower than the long-run average because the long-run average going back to 2010, based on my nerdy Excel formula there, is up by 6.4 this year, a gain of 5.7%. Like I mentioned right here, I'll share this here in a little bit. The gains in home prices compared to 1 year ago is impacted, not solely the reason, but is impacted by the mix in sales. More home sales in the range of $750 to over $1 million, whereas sales in the lower range of the market not increasing at the same rates. So the mix in sales impacting the year-over-year changes in prices overall. Let's also discuss the changes over the past several years in the median sold price. We're up by 3% from 2 years ago, up by 18% from 2021. Prices have increased by 42% since April 2020. And when looking at pre-pandemic levels, we're up by 53%. And just for fun, the changes in prices from April 2008 through April of 2009 fell by 17%, whereas this year it increased by 5.7%. In regards to my comment saying that the increase compared to 12 months ago in home prices is impacted by the mix in sales, at least to some extent. So here's a really good snapshot looking at the percent change in sales from 12 months ago by price range. The biggest increase, or the biggest gain year over year are houses that sold for over $1 million, up by nearly 40%. In the range of $750 to $1 million, up by nearly 24%. $500,000 to $750, up by 17%. Whereas home sales in the range of $250 to $500 only increased by 7.6%. And of course, sales less than $100,000 decreasing by 7%. So the biggest gains for these price segments is over $1 million, big increases for over $750,000 as well. So here's another way to look at this. Here's a look at the percent change in sales from 12 months ago for each of these 4 major US regions. We're not talking about just one region in which more expensive houses are selling much more so compared to April of 2023. It's really across the board. So the West, for example, sales over $1 million increased by nearly 42%. In the range of $250 to $1 million, that increased by about 21%. In contrast, it decreased for sales for less than $500,000. And in fact, looking at all these regions, the biggest increases for all these regions were sales for over $1 million. And we're seeing, barely a gain for houses in the more affordable range, especially in the Northeast, for example. In the range of $100,000 to $250,000, down 7.8%, whereas sales over $750 and over $1 million absolutely surging. I did some digging for you guys as well because this is a common trend we're seeing so far this year. So looking at March of 2024, the report from about a month ago, you can see this big gain in sales for over $1 million, up by 14%, in the range of $750 to $1 million, increasing by 5%. All other price segments here decrease from 1 year ago. On top of that, look at February. February, 2 months ago, the report, look at this, giant increase of 36.8% for over $1 million, in the range of $750 to $1 million, increasing by 23.3%. In contrast, sales for less than $250,000 fell year over year this February. So I mentioned that because, again, this is not the only reason why home prices have been increasing, but because we're seeing more sales in the upper range of the market and less sales in the lower range, this is also impacting home prices overall nationwide. And again, when I'm talking about home prices, I'm talking about the median sold price nationwide. Going back to NAR's report before I wrap this video up, let's talk about days in the market, because days in the market this April was at 26 days. Again, this is a time frame when you list your house for sale until you accept an offer from home buyer. That is at 26 days this April, down from 33 days in March and up from 22 days in April of 2023. So houses on average selling for about 4 days longer compared to 12 months ago. Based on this monthly survey, first-time home buyers purchased 33% of all home sales this April, up from 32% in March and up from 29% from April of 2023. All cash sales were at about 28% of all transactions this April, identical to March and from a year ago. In regards to investor purchases or second home buyers, they purchased 16% of all houses in April, up from 15% in March, but down from the 17% from April of 2023. Also, distressed home sales, which of course are defined by foreclosures or short sales, is virtually non-existent at only 2%, unchanged from last month and from the prior year. With that said, please comment below your biggest takeaways from today's video. Also, if you guys got any value out of this video whatsoever, then please hit the like button. I greatly appreciate that. Of course, I appreciate you. Again, if you guys want a real estate agent referral nationwide, check out my website, which is realestateteamfinder.com. Hope you guys have an awesome day, and we look forward to seeing you on the next video.